It is the 201st vlog here on this channel. I had a feeling I'd hear from a number of you, and I did in the last vlog, saying that you've been with me for all 200, and I can't even begin to express how much I genuinely appreciate that. Some exciting news to start this vlog. The Atlantis Poker Room has a bad beat jackpot that has now hit $143,000. So, with that in mind, I'm going to Peppermill because I don't give a fuck about jackpots. I'd show up at 11 a.m. on a Thursday morning to find a really good game going on table one. Despite losing $5,000 last week, I did manage to book back-to-back $1,400 wins in my previous two sessions to recover most of that, and the goal was to make some more progress on that in this 0-5-10 winner straddle game. I'd buy in for $1,000 and grab a cup of coffee as I worked my way towards becoming an OMC. I show up to see vlog viewers Mike and Jamal getting it all in with aces against jacks, and a jack coming on board number 2 to result in the chop. The rock you see indicates the winner's straddle, and in this hand, that's the low jack. I have jack 10 of diamonds on the button and make it 25. Big blind calls, and the low jack completes. So at 75 in, the board comes out queen of diamonds, 8 of diamonds, 8 of spades, giving me a straight flush draw. Big blind checks, and to my surprise, the low jack leads out into me for 50. My read on what hand he would do this with would ultimately prove to be incorrect. On an unpaired board, I'd likely raise this a lot of the time here, but with the 2 8s out there, I figured that I would just call. So with 175 in, the turn is the 6 of clubs, and now he bets out for 50 again. The problem was, I just wasn't sure how many outs I was going to have here. And my guess was that he'd be making this bet a lot of the time with a similar draw to mine. And obviously, if he has a bigger diamond draw, there's little chance he's going to fold it, knowing what I know about his style of play if I were to raise here. And if he has a weaker draw, well, obviously, I don't want him to fold it. So with that in mind, I just call again. And with 275 in, the river is another 6. So I brick out completely, but he now checks. I figure he's still going to be betting ace-queen or king-queen here. So if I'm going to have any chance to win this pot, I figured I needed to bet an amount designed to get him to fold a hand like queen-9 or queen-10. So I make it 170, and he goes deep into the tank. And after about 30 seconds, he says that he feels this is going to be a bad call. But he ultimately does make it, which creates a $615 pot, and I lose to pocket sevens. Definitely not a hand that I'd even considered that he would take this line with, but he picks off my bluff to start this session. Couple hands later, we get a $35 open from +1 and a call from MP1. I have pocket kings in the hijack and make it 100. Not only do both of these guys call me, but the big blind calls me as well. So with 400 in, we get a flop that comes out 10-9-5, 2 clubs, and it gets checked to me. I bet half the pot with my overpair here. And then the big blind, who I think may have been playing all night, jams all in for a little over 200 more. And after it folded back to me, I snap called the bet. So we are all in a $1,250 pot, and it turns out that I'm against pocket jacks, which obviously was ideal, as was the run out. So kings hold, and after bluffing off all that money, I get it back in that hand. I then lose $180 with jacks against the only player in the game I don't know, who called my flop bet on 9-10-6 and then fired big on the turn when a king hit, and I decided to relinquish. Later, I was in the winner's straddle with, you guessed it, 8 deuce. And the dealer, who wishes to remain nameless, actually made a joke about me having 8 deuce in the rock while I had 8 deuce in the rock, which I found funny.
Octo's up. 5 of you.
I'd unfortunately lose some money with it because I did flop top pair with that 8, and after I got raised, I didn't feel all that optimistic about it, so I let it go. I then flopped a flush draw with jack 7 of spades and a short stack raised all in for 260 over my $80 bet. I made the call and would ultimately lose a $700 pot when his 9-5 offsuit would hold up after I once again bricked all of my outs because hitting draws, come to find out, is just not that easy to do. So I lost that hand, and the next 2 hours were equally miserable. I didn't lose any big hands. I just got into a lot of small pots with suited connectors and big aces and didn't win a single one of them. This is a mid-session update. The man who said this
Feliz Navidad.
has told me that I have a $100 free roll outstanding if I can get local legend Mr. Z to go on camera and say this.
English, motherfucker. Do you speak it?
Unfortunately, I think
bendeach is drawing dead.
So I was stuck over $1,000 and I add on chips and was now in the game for $2,500, as I would, for the first time on the day, get in a hand against the aforementioned Mr. Z. It would come when he'd raised to 20 MP1 with the low jack and cutoff calling. I have pocket fives and the big blind incomplete, so with 80 in, we get a 5, 6, 7 rainbow board. And I look to go for the check raise, which, as a Chinese proverb states, you can only do when your opponent bets. So the flop checks through, and the turn is an ace. Figure I should just lead out into this, so I decide to make it 65, and then Mr. Z MP1 raises to 200 with the others folding. Now if I were to 3-bet this, I'd push out a lot of his aces, and of course all of his bluffs. I'd also open myself to getting stacked if he has me beat here, which could obviously be the case a decent amount of the time. So with that in mind, I decided to just call. And with 480 in, the river doesn't change anything, and I check. This time he fires in 5 black chips. It's a polarized bet, leaving little reason for me to raise. So I just make the snap call, creating a $1,480 pot, and he says, good call. I decide to just fast roll my hand in spots like this against non-pros, and the pot gets shipped in this direction. The game then gets significantly worse, with Mr. Z table changing and 2 others who give action booking their wins. And how about this? We get a player sit down wearing the exact same shirt as the player next to him. I don't think I've ever seen it quite like that before. The aforementioned Mike would then get into a hand against one of the plaid shirt wearing twins and get a full double up for $1,290. I'd get aces against one of those two, but given how tight they both play, it was a win for me just to pick up $35 in total profit before I ultimately got a river fold. I then raise pocket queens pre-flop and don't bet after getting heads up on ace jack 10. The turn was another ace, which I thought was a good card for me, and my $50 bet got min raised and I opted to call it. The river came another 10 and he bet less than half the pot. I paid him off despite knowing I probably shouldn't have. The minute I called, he actually said, that's a bad river, which I thought meant that was a good thing for me. But all he was saying was he already had aces full of 10s and was worried we'd now be chopping.
all right, I just lost like 15 small pots in a row, so I'm taking Reno Grinder to get tacos. Do you have any comps at all?
None. Zero.
No comp. He plays every day, and he never has any comps.
One day I will.
It's truly amazing.
I'll save them.
Back to you.
So after a few hours of play when the game was good, I was now stuck in a game that was pretty lousy. I'd lose 2 more small pots and then Slick would enter the game, and I wouldn't waste any time getting involved in a hand against him. It comes when he limps in +1, and I have 10s in the hijack and make it 50. The straddle on the button gives me action which I didn't expect, but Mr. C calls as well, and that I did expect. So with 155 in, the flop comes out Jack, Jack 9, 2 clubs, and it gets checked to me. I bet 65 here on what is definitely a flop that I'd call average for this hand. Button folds, but Slick then starts talking, per usual. And, given the fact that he enjoys Hollywooding during hands, made me think something was up here. After asking if I can stand a raise, he decides to call. And after he calls, he says, put a 10 out there. And with 285 in, the turn is a 7, and he checks again. This time I decide to check back, given what I had just mentioned, and the river rolls off a king, and after some deliberation, he just bets $100 here. That's obviously one of the worst cards in the deck for me. He could easily have king queen and may have been slow playing before that, so I decided to fold this hand, and he shows king jack for top boat. I really wish that he'd hit that 10 that he wanted instead. After winning that hand off of me, Slick then table changes to the other game, which featured 2 pros. I then raised queens and got 3-bet by an unknown opponent. Turns out he had ace-king, and I ended up losing $300 after he flopped his king. Things stayed pretty brutal after that for me the next 2 hours, including a time where I turned 2 pair, and after raising my opponent, he opted to 3-bet the turn. I folded the hand, and he showed just bottom pair. He was obviously very proud of that bluff, which I will give him credit for, is a line that I simply never see taken as a bluff in this game. I had a bit of a conundrum. I'd been playing the game for 8 hours, and the game had potential to get even better. I'm stuck a significant amount of money. So, what should I do? I thought about grinding it out for a few more hours, but I ultimately decided that I wasn't playing my A game at that point, stuck as much money as I was stuck, and should just try it back tomorrow. Because no matter how much you're stuck, you don't have to get even today. So I rack up and book the loss.
All right, so the last 2 vlogs have resembled the last 2 years in the NFC Championship game for the 49ers. Plenty of opportunity, only to end up in extreme disappointment. And that was the case today. The game was really good earlier on, dipped down to its worst quality towards the middle of the day, and then got a little bit better, but not much towards the end, ultimately booking a $1,270 loss on this day. I was trying to find a wild card hand to get in there. I couldn't get one in there. The last one that I did a couple of vlogs back was me trying to find kind of a ridiculous outcome to a hand and have you guys guess at it. And while I don't have a wild card hand, I have kind of a wild card vlog trivia thing you could think about, because I was wondering what the answer was. Years ago, it seemed like it was very rare when I would have a $1,000 decision either way, playing in what was then a $3, $5 blind game. It certainly happened a decent amount, going all the way back to 2010, but certainly they weren't very common. Well, I counted up the amount of $1,000 decisions I had in 2022. So here's what I want you to guess. What percentage of my total sessions were $1,000 decisions, either winning 1,000 or losing 1,000? I was glad to find out that I won significantly more than I lost of those sessions, but what percentage total were $1,000 either way? Person who gets it in the comments to the closest percentage will get a shout out on the next vlog.
I have to mention a story involving my son. It's kind of like Bill Simmons would talk about on his podcast, like Parent Corner, if you will, which I'm going to do here after I tell you about the fact that Crush Live Poker, which is the official training partner of this vlog, is now offering a deal that can save you even more money if you are someone like me who genuinely values what they have to offer. As always, you can get 25% off for life on a basic or premium subscription, but now you can also get that same percentage off on an elite subscription. And what that allows you to do is just pay annually, and you can get an even more discounted rate. So you can save over $100 per year if you sign up using the link in the description below. Crush Live Poker is the only place I've ever gone for live poker training, and it's just kind of become a part of my life that I wouldn't want to not have there. Just hearing Bart talk about poker hands every week has changed my game for the better and helped me turn a much bigger profit for now probably going on 12, 13 years. Now, as far as my son, here's what happened. It's just kind of funny how like something that you love becomes, I don't want to say a nuisance, but it's almost like flipped on you, if you will. So when my son was 1, going on 2 around then, when I would put him to sleep, I think I mentioned it on this vlog, how there's just no better feeling than holding your child and having them like fall asleep with their head on your shoulder. And it was just always a great feeling. And I lay him down, put him to sleep. Now, what's happening is now that he's 3, he's basically been waking up in the middle of the night and he'll just start yelling for me. And he will not take no for an answer, this kid. He will keep yelling for me until I come into his room and see what's going on. There's nothing actually wrong. But when I get in there, now what does he say? He says, I want to sleep on your shoulder. So, I got to lay there with him and let him fall asleep actually on my shoulder. And then, he sleeps the rest of the night. So it's become like this thing where now I'm constantly losing sleep as a result of this thing that I love so much. So I guess I did it to myself, if you will. That'll wrap things up for us on this edition of the vlog. Hit those like and subscribe buttons. It is great for the channel, and follow me on Twitter and Instagram at bendeach. We'll see you back here next time.